It has been a solid 6 months since our last tier list, and we are long overdue for another one. So sit down, buckle up, and let's get going. First up, please understand that we're going to be doing a couple minutes worth of explanation of terms and where I'm coming from with this tier list. Normally I would give you all a skip link to skip the doobly-doo and get right to the meat of the video, but it's critically important that you all understand where I'm coming from, what the ratings mean, and why just because I rate something in tier C, tier D, whatever, does not mean it's a terrible, awful gun, you're a bad gamer, and you should insult me for having a different opinion than you. Okay? So, I just want to get that out of here first, and at the front of the video. We'll get to the meat soon, but please, do us all a favor. Let's listen to the terms of what the ratings mean first. Okay? As a quick refresher on our tiers, we have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and then everything else, D, F, kind of doesn't matter from that point on. If something is rated in S tier, it is, in my opinion, overpowered. It is a weapon that is a prime candidate to be nerfed, and probably will be receiving some kind of balance change in the near future. Any weapon in A tier is very strong at all phases of the game, even without attachments or with very, very minimal attachments. A B tier weapon is very strong at all phases of the game, but has some kind of a drawback or requirement or hard limiting factor that means that you can only use it in specific ways, but when certain criteria are met, it is an excellent, excellent gun. A C tier weapon is still good. This is a weapon that is good at least parts of the game, if not the entire game. While it may be overshadowed by other categories, other weapons, it's not something that is awful. I'm not saying you should never use it, that it shouldn't be your favorite gun. It's just, there are simply better options out there, but it is certainly viable if it is what the game gives you in your loot pool. A D tier weapon is one that I do not recommend you try to take into endgame. It is something that has too many flaws, is too overshadowed, and just quite simply not good enough to be brought into endgame to be competitive against super high level teams who are running 3 Peacekeepers and 399s or Wingmans or whatever. If you have super meta teams of small hitboxes, god tier gamers, these are the weapons that under nearly no circumstance will cut it unless you are a god tier gamer yourself. But if you are one of those, why are you watching this video? And then finally, F tier. I'm not sure that anything we're going to rate today is going to make it into the F tier, but I think you guys can figure out for yourself what that might entail. Probably launch Mozambique, launch P2020. Think along those lines. Finally, please recognize that I am neither a console gamer, nor a controller gamer, nor an Apex Predator tier top-level PC gamer, okay? I have my own flaws and shortcomings just like you and everyone else. Also recognize that this guide is meant for the average to below average player. This is not meant for people who are in the top 1% of Apex Legends players, because clearly you're going to have your own thoughts and opinions and experiences that you have for yourself. My thoughts here are not going to be relevant to you. So if you are one of those top level players, please understand these tips, these tricks, these ratings are applicable to the average person who is aspiring to be better at the game. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the tier list proper. Just like last time, instead of going in tier order, we're going to run through each weapon category, through each weapon in order, and give them a rating or possibly two depending upon a couple of factors if I feel that more than one rating is necessary. Starting with assault rifles, we're going to go into the R301. This gun has not been changed since the last tier list in any major way. It's good early game, mid game, and late game. It's got excellent recoil, nearly best in class DPS and TTK. The differences are on the order of a couple of milliseconds, certainly fewer milliseconds than you'll be able to notice given the server's low tick rate of about 20 Hz and the average ping between you and the server and everyone else on that server. A couple of milliseconds here between this gun and say a flatline is not going to be noticed by 99.9% of players pretty much ever. So effectively, this has got best-in-class DPS and TTK alongside the Flatline and Havoc for all intents and purposes. The R301 has some of the best hipfire in the assault rifle category, a very common ammo type because literally everyone and their mother is running R99s just like they have been since day one of this game being out, so light ammo is pretty much always plentiful, which is a good thing for the 301. This gun also has arguably the best iron sights of all assault rifles. I know I personally love these iron sights and am not personally offended by the fact that I may have to use no sights on this thing for a good 5 to 10 minutes in a game if it means my wingman in my secondary slot has a good 1x iron on it. So this gun is great all around at all stages of the game. It's always useful, always powerful, always got good DPS. It's very versatile, just a very, very excellent weapon. Very clearly an A tier in my opinion. Now on the downsides, again, just like last time, we're going to have a lot of repeats from the previous tier list because not everything has changed. This gun is hungry for a blue or purple magazine. The white one is certainly helpful, but it only gives you a couple of bullets. It's barely noticeable. Once you get into that blue or purple range, all of a sudden things start feeling way different with this gun, and your consistency with your ability to one-mag people will probably go way up. This is all not even to mention the anvil receiver, which gives you a little bit more than double damage per bullet for the trade-off of a massively reduced rate of fire and the force of using the single fire mode. It's fine. It's okay. It makes the 301 a little bit more versatile. It gives you a kind of like the old G7 almost, like before the G7 got buffed. You're kind of like using that almost, but it just doesn't feel as good. I don't know, like maybe I just haven't used it enough yet. That is certainly possible, but in the time I've spent with it, and boy have I tried to use it, the few times I've even been able to build it and find it, I feel like in 90% of fights where I was using the anvil receiver on 301, I would have been equally, if not better served by simply using the full auto mode instead. Now, maybe at super long ranges, if you want to try to snipe people and burn through your light ammo reserves with the anvil receiver to get a couple points of damage, sure, go for it. But in those situations, in those kinds of fights, you could very easily just hold W and get closer to your opponents and just kill them that way with your Peacekeeper or your Wingman or your R99 instead. The anvil receiver is not a bad attachment, but I, generally speaking, don't find many situations where I think it makes this gun or the flatline even significantly better. It's nice to have, but that's it. Next up we have the Hemlock, teetering, in my opinion, between the B and C tiers. This gun is usable in the early and mid game, thanks to its really nice damage profile on the burst fire mode and its pretty acceptable hip fire. Now, the iron sights are still like looking through the hole of a brick. It's still really hard to use. You absolutely need an optic on this thing, but outside of that, it's not terrible. Like, your damage per second is pretty okay. Your ability to shred through people who are not paying attention, especially if you can line up a couple of headshots, is quite good. If the stars align for the Hemlock, it's not bad. It's actually more than not bad. It's pretty good actually. But the thing is that it's just, I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just not for me. Maybe you as the viewer, you really like burst rifles and you can do well with them, but for me, the burst fire is just simply uncomfortable and it limits me in my ability to aim, my ability to track targets, and my ability to just lay the hurt onto people. I think a big part of it too might be that dueling with this weapon is a little bit harder than something like a 301 or Havoc, because you're only shooting in bursts, like boom, 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 you know, burst, that it's a little bit difficult to keep an enemy sufficiently aim punched. So that means that as you're hitting them and as you're shooting them, their aim is being thrown in all different directions, which makes it harder for them to track you effectively and keep their bullets on target. Like on a 301, you're constantly aim punching people. Same thing with the R99, for example. But on a Hemlock, you get one aim punch, and then they have like a short little window of a few milliseconds where they can readjust their aim, recenter on you, and then continue doing damage to you, potentially throwing your second burst off. And it's like, it's these microscopic little things, this little bit of a lack of dueling prowess in a 1v1 situation where you have a Hemlock versus another assault rifle, for example, in like a one-on-one fight where you as a Wraith and the enemy Wraith are both looking at each other and actively fighting each other, where I think the Hemlock starts to fall a little bit behind. Just that consistent damage from something like a 301 or Havoc is going to be in most situations better than the Hemlock, in my personal opinion. If you really like it, great, good for you. I hope that you can do a whole lot of excellent work with it and you have a fun time using it. But for me, I feel the gun is outclassed by pretty much every other assault rifle. I would rather have a 301 Flatline or Havoc in 99% of situations, and I don't think that if you haven't already found success with the Hemlock, I don't think you should start trying to find success with it. I think you should switch to other guns. Next up, we have the Flatline. Now, this gun is actually pretty, well, contentious, let's say, between me personally and my opinions and that of my viewer base. So, I'll give you this. I've just recently done a video about this within the last month or so. I'm going to link that below. I suggest you watch that to get the full depth of my opinions and review on this gun. But the overall theme here is that I feel like, personally, while the Flatline's time to kill and DPS is very, very minutely better than the Havoc and 301 in most situations, not all, but most, I don't think that minuscule increase in DPS is worth the very poor handling characteristics of this weapon. The ADS spray, so basically the direction your aim recoils when you're shooting, varies multiple times throughout the spread, and it goes multiple different directions. It's, in my opinion, pretty difficult to control in a full auto spray past about 10 bullets, which you can't really say about like the Havoc or 301. Those guns you can control very well for the entirety of their roughly 30 round spray if you have a purple mag on either of them. With a Flatline, your recoil changes multiple times. Because you're doing that, you have to stop firing repeatedly to let your recoil settle and go back into the beginning pattern of where you just need to pull down and to the right to keep good accuracy on somebody. And because of that, your DPS plummets, your TTK skyrockets, the gun falls behind. Now, if you're in a situation where you're really close range and you can barrel stuff somebody with this gun and just lay into them at full auto, then sure, the Flatline will kill between 20 and 60 milliseconds faster than a 301. But really, who cares? If you're able to do that to someone, you're playing so much better than they are, your positioning is so much better, you could be using nearly any gun and achieving very similar results. So I don't think the Flatline is super great. I don't think you should target it. I don't think that you should stick with this gun past like mid-game unless you get an Anvil receiver and your loot is not great and this is just the best thing you can find. Then sure, it's like B tier. It's solid. It's certainly better than a Hemlock in most situations, but as you can tell by the intensity of what I'm talking about right now, I very much don't think that the Flatline is worth having over a 301, especially because the 301, if you're having that and building that instead, can very easily transition into the god tier gun of the game, the R99. A Flatline, I suppose, could also transition into becoming a wingman when you find that, so that argument is pretty much a wash on both sides, but still, like, I just don't think the Flatline is really all there. I think this gun is basically meant to be used as a heavy mag holder for your wingman whenever you manage to find one. Up until that point, this is just a whatever gun. You can keep it if you want to. If you really love it, then go have fun, keep using it, keep shooting people with it. But if you're trying to get really good at the game, you're trying to make your way up the rank ladder and eventually find your way into Apex Predator, I think that the Flatline is a gun you should stop torturing yourself with, and you should start going a little bit more towards the meta of R301, R99, Wingman, Peacekeeper, things along that line of thinking generally tend to be much better guns. Next up, we have the Havoc, which is pretty much the definition of B tier. This is a very powerful weapon, excellent TTK, excellent DPS, but you kinda need a turbocharger to really make it shine, especially on a big map like this. Now, you can absolutely deal with the gun without a hop-up, and it works great. It's still got really, really good stats, but the thing with World's Edge is that you're gonna be shooting people and plinking single shots from really long ranges fairly often as a non-Apex Predator, non-Peacekeeper R99 wingman slamming veteran. If you're not one of those, longer range fights, plink battles are going to be a thing you're going to see regularly, and the Havoc falls behind every other assault rifle in that specific scenario because you can't tap fire people unless you have either a select fire for the hit scan beam or turbocharger, so you can just click and shoot as opposed to having to wait for a charge up every single bullet. Outside of those limitations though, the Havoc is still really, really excellent of a gun, just like it was in our last tier list. It's great early game, it's great mid game, it's great late game, as long as you got that turbocharger or you're in a situation where you can deal with having that short windup, which really is not as hard to deal with as you might think. It's a hop-up holder for the Prowler, it's a hop-up holder for the Devotion, it's got identical DPS and time to kill to the R301 and Flatline for the most part. It's very slightly better than 301. It's just overall a really, really good gun. Now, the thing is with this hit scan select fire mode that pretty much nobody used on Kings Canyon, no one still uses it on World's Edge. That didn't change. It's still nearly unused. It's like a unicorn when you actually see someone else using it. But it is a viable thing that you can do, and I'm kind of surprised more people aren't at least trying to target, especially with the charge rifle having a couple of nerfs brought its way. Now all of a sudden the Havoc has kind of like a similar thing to Anvil Receiver, where you have a new firing mode where it does more damage per trigger pull for the cost of more ammunition, but you also get the benefit of it being hit scan as opposed to a projectile you're still trying to lead. So like, really, if you like Anvil on Flatline, you like Anvil on 301, why aren't you trying select fire on Havoc? I really do think that this is a thing that's being underused and should probably be tried to be used a little bit more by the player base at large. Am I saying it's really good? No. It's just like the Anvil on that it's fine. It's okay. It's a nice little side grade, lets you do some different things. It's not something you should be going way out of your way to target, but I'm simply just surprised at how few people are attempting to make this work. I would have thought the incidence rate of Havoc Select Fire would be higher this patch than it's ever been, but it seems to still be at basically 0. Regardless though, going back to the full auto fire mode, which is what you should be using 99.999% of the time, just remember your recoil is very heavy, but it's pretty much straight up. So it's very easy for you to just simply pull straight down with your mouse at all phases of this gun's full auto spray, 30 plus bullets deep, and you're going to be just fine in keeping that aim on target, much better than just about any other assault rifle for the most part. Now granted, it's going to require more corrective mouse movement overall on the Havoc than you would need on a 301, for example, but the 301 kicks in a couple of different directions, whereas the Havoc is just a straight line. If you can pull that mouse straight down while tracking, then, I mean, you're going to be drilling people for quite a lot of damage. And because that recoil on the Havoc is so great, you're going to get a lot of accidental headshots on people, which hit hard on the Havoc, given how much base damage this thing has. It's really just quite good. I'm a huge fan of the Havoc. B tier weapon by technicality, but in my heart, I love it. It's one of my favorite guns. I will always take one if the opportunity presents itself to me and I don't already have like R99 Peacekeeper or Wingman Peacekeeper or something like that. Moving up to the Alternator, this is pretty much identical to where we were at in our last tier list. We've completely missed the Disruptor rounds meta from when that was happening. That happened after the first tier list and is now already over before this one happened, so we can't really include that within our tier evaluations whatsoever. But the Alternator, just like last time, is like a B tier weapon, maybe C tier. It's not something that you want to take into the end game. It's just like, it's a fine SMG. It's good early game, it's fine mid game. You don't want it late game, but if you absolutely have to, it is technically a gun that shoots bullets in a full auto fashion while letting you walk at full speed while ADS, so it's not that bad. The recoil is very easy to control. This gun has like some of the easiest recoil of any gun that's full auto within Apex. So if you're looking to practice that, Alternator is a great place to start. It's also got excellent hip fire. It's an attachment holder for your R99. It's an attachment holder for your R301. It's just a starter version of the better guns in the game. but that doesn't necessarily make it bad in and of its own right. It is an excellent, excellent gun, if you consider the fact that your DPS and TTK are not the best, and it's very much so outshined by an R99, but it does well enough. It's, if nothing else, a nice gun to keep in the interim, so that way once you find that R99, it's instantly built up to excellent, excellent attachment levels, and you have one of the best guns in the game immediately. So the alternator is your attachment holder, and that's fine. Next up, we have what is, in my opinion, the first S-tier weapon of this meta. The R99 has received multiple nerfs ever since the game's launch, and yet it is still in a ridiculous state of power, in my opinion. I still think the gun is too good, but then again, the R99 and the Wingman both are kind of staples of Respawn. They are some of the signature weapons of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2, and it's only fitting that they remain signature weapons within Apex Legends as well. Kind of like the Hemlock has always been substandard in Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 and remains substandard in Apex Legends. This is just kind of the recurring theme of where the weapons sit. So you do have that to, I guess, keep in mind if you find that to be a valid point, but looking at a pure game balance and game design perspective, I do think the R99 in this game is overtuned. I do think that it is too much in this game, and here's why. It is excellent early game, excellent mid game, excellent in late game. It has best-in-class DPS and time to kill. It's got excellent hip fire. It's got a very common ammo type, especially because everyone's using this gun, so therefore everyone carries ammo for it. It's got the universal benefits that all SMGs have in a full or near full ADS move speed. It's viable as a hip-fire gun for your maximum movement speed. It's got very quick reload speeds. It's just all around, everything about it is really, really good. It can even equip gold barrels to get rid of that pesky muzzle flash and give you way, way easier recoil control. Now, on the R99, the recoil is a little bit strong at medium ranges just because this is a bullet hose SMG. I mean, what do you expect? But at the range where you can actually just hold the trigger and full auto laser people, you know, it's controllable out to, you know, like a good 20, 30, 40 meters, something in that ballpark. But beyond that, not a chance. Very short 2-round bursts with this gun are shockingly effective at long ranges, and you don't need to wait very long between the bursts. I mean, you can go bam, 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 really quick, just clicking and letting go, click, let go, click, let go, really, really rapidly. Which I'm gonna put a clip in here of it somewhere of me lasering down a Bloodhound, and you can see just like, sure, it's like white armor and not super far away, but like it's a level of damage per second and a consistency that you would not expect out of a bullet hose SMG. And if you have a little bit of trigger control, you can really range people with this thing far beyond where you might think would normally be reasonable, as long as your aim is good and your opponents are, you know, not an 80 strafing, crouch spamming, 300 ping Wraith. As long as they're not that, you know, you're probably gonna do pretty well. Subjectively, one thing to note, just like we did last time, there are some legendary skins for this gun which change your iron sights. You may like them better, you may like them worse. So this is one of those guns that potentially sits in the quote-unquote pay-to-win skins category, where you may like the skins that have that big tube off the side because they make your iron sights much more open and clear on target. You may like the Iron Crown skin, you may like the default skin, but the irons change a few different ways. There's a few different permutations based upon whichever legendary skin you use, so do keep that in mind. Finally, the one, I guess, downside of this gun is that you're pretty hungry for a blue or purple mag, just like the R301, but everyone's gonna have those because everyone's running R99, so everyone's targeting that, everyone's looking for it. It's a very high value piece of loot that is not super rare. So by the time you get to endgame, after you have 5, 6, 7, 8 kills, you are going to have that attachment, period, end. So is that really much of a downside? No, I don't think so. Next up, we've got the Prowler. This is going to be pretty squarely in B tier. And, well, I mean, this is pretty defining of the B tier, right? This is a gun that, in its full auto state, is really powerful. It's not able to DPS people like an R99 could, but it has such easy to control recoil, it's a good enough fire rate, good enough damage profile, a very huge magazine that, like, it's a good gun. It has a lot of things going for it, but it sits in B tier because you kind of need that select fire attachment. Now, not to say there's anything wrong with the burst fire, but it doesn't really sit quite as well with me. Just like I don't like the Hemlock for being a burst weapon, I don't really like the Prowler as much either. It's fine, I guess, in burst mode, but you'd really rather have a lot of other things. And the thing that holds the Prowler back is that you kind of want that select fire to make it full auto, but very few people carry select fires because there's only 2 guns that use it, and that's going to be the Prowler and the Havoc. And no one's putting a select fire on their Havoc. Come on, like, people would rather just have no hop up than even put a select fire in, it seems. It's pretty crazy. This gun is hampered not by its own merits, but simply because it's really hard to justify holding a Prowler in your inventory instead of a Wingman, 99, Peacekeeper, or whatever other meta gun. It's really hard to justify keeping that Prowler there and looking and hoping and begging for a select fire. The only time you're gonna really use this is, like, if your teammates ping both a Prowler and a select fire in the same loot zone and you go out of your way to pick it up, or you get really lucky and the 2 things spawn next to each other, or you spawn in with a Prowler, can't find any better guns, go to your 2nd or 3rd loot zone and find a select fire. Okay, sure, like, the game's loot tables are just kind of informing you this is the gun you're going to use at that point. It's not really something you care enough about to build that you're going to hold on to it forever to try to make it happen. It's like, you're just stop trying to make the Prowler happen. It's not going to happen. I really do think that if Respawn were to ever introduce a 3rd weapon that uses select fire and gets really good use out of it, like, for example, what if they were to give the Hemlock the ability to use select fire to go into Starburst mode, like from Titanfall 1, where it would be a 5-round burst instead of 3? That might be pretty good considering how much damage per bullet the Hemlock has. The fact that you could belch out 5 really strong bullets from that gun might be a reasonable reason to actually keep it in your inventory and try to put a select fire on it. So either that or, I mean, whatever else. Maybe a new gun that uses select fire, or find a usage for a select fire on an older weapon. Whatever the case may be, just, I very strongly think that if a 3rd select fire compatible weapon were to exist, the Prowler would just by design become a much better, more viable, more often seen weapon because select fires would be easier to come across because more people are looking for them and keeping them in their inventories. So at this point, the gun is really, really good, but it's just tough to justify despite its tier positioning because it's inconsistently able to be even put together. So if you can find it and use it, you're gonna have great success with it, but it's not so overpowered and crazy and good that it's gonna force you to go out of your way to try to make a Prowler happen. Next up, we got the Devotion, and this is also a pretty solid B tier weapon in my opinion. It's good in the early, mid, and late games, amazing DPS and TTK with turbocharger attached. I'm sure it can be a little tough to use in some situations without the turbocharger, but there are ways to mitigate that and counterplay that and make it a little bit better. Like, for example, if you know there's an enemy that is very close to you, just around a corner, around a box, some piece of cover, whatever the case may be, instead of waiting until you see them to start holding left mouse button and shooting them, you could instead just start spinning the gun up and start shooting into the wall before you even turn around the corner. So that way, by the time you're actually getting your sights on target, you're already dumping your mag at pretty much full rate of fire. But that being said, if your opponent is even remotely intelligent, they are going to realize what is happening, and they're going to start running away and getting themselves to another piece of cover and out of that situation before you can start hurting them. So that's kind of where turbocharger comes into play, because you can just drop on people and start dumping and they can't react. So there's a lot of ifs and buts going around here, which is pretty much the definition of a B tier weapon, right? No matter how strong and how fast the Devotion kills, because it has this awkward wind-up, that is exactly what B tier is. This is a weapon with amazing potential. It can do crazy amounts of damage. I personally love it this patch. They didn't even change anything, but something about this map, or maybe my play style, or what has changed, I don't know what, but the Devotion feels so strong in my hands right now. I absolutely love having it. And it's one of my personal favorites. Now, on the downsides here, apart from the whole turbocharger pseudo requirement, you have a very slow walk speed while you're aiming down sights. So this gun is going to do really well on Gibraltar because of his gun shield and his overall fortified perk, giving him just significant damage reductions or complete mitigation. It's going to let him avoid aim punch for a very long period of time, so you can keep this devotion on target and burn through people really, really effectively. By the time they deal 75 damage to you, you've done like 100, 150 to them. So it has excellent potential, especially on Gibraltar, but it's just fine on pretty much any legend, especially super aggro ones like Wraith, Octane, Lifeline. You get up in people's faces, you hip fire them down with this thing. This is the definition of bullet hose. You're gonna do just fine like that. My biggest recommendation here is to go into the firing range and learn the recoil pattern of this weapon, because you're going to need to really figure it out to make the gun work well. But here is like a quick cheat sheet, just a basic guide to it without going into too much detail. The first 2 bullets have crazy vertical recoil, just pretty much straight up, a little left, but mostly vertical. So you're gonna pull down really hard with your mouse for the first 2 shots. After that, you're gonna pull down and to the right for the next 10, 15 bullets. And then you're gonna switch to pulling down and to the left pretty hard for the remainder of your magazine. Basically, like the gun's recoil is all over the place, but it's gonna go up, then it's gonna go up left, and then it's gonna go kind of a staircase pattern up and to the right. So if you do the opposite movements, just straight down, then down right, then down left, with your mouse, that is going to let you control it fairly well. Takes practice. I know it sounds weird being explained in words, but sit down for 15 minutes and just practice with it with no barrel, then with a purple barrel, and get used to it, and you'll start to kind of build a muscle memory for how this gun recoils. Then you can pull it out in actual games and shred people like you've never shred them before. This is a gun that absolutely, positively benefits from just a little bit of practice. So I recommend you go out of your way and do that, and you'll be in love just as much as I am, I'm sure. So the Spitfire is up next, and this is one of the weirdest ones for me to rate, because last map, I rated it as A tier, and nothing has changed since then, but in this patch, on this map, I don't feel like it's as good in general, but I'm struggling to come up with a solid reason as to why, because even though World's Edge is a lot bigger than Kings Canyon, most of the fights still happen in relatively equivalent ranges that you would find on Kings, at least now that people are figuring out the map and they're more comfortable being a little bit more aggressive and stuff like that. I don't know why the Spitfire feels worse to me. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's the fact that G7 is better and I'm getting drilled by long-range weapons more often while aiming down sights with this thing, because, like, you know, it's an LMG, and when you aim down sights, you're walking really slow, so it's easier for G7s to hit you, easier for wingmen to hit you, easier for Peacekeeper, which is, like, super duper S tier, mega overpowered right now. Like, maybe it's those things where I'm just being punished harder for using it, that I don't feel like it's as good. I don't really know. Like, it's a strong gun, it's got good DPS and TTK, it needs very little in the way of attachments, just an optic because the irons are horrible, and like, any barrel will do you just fine, any magazine will do you just fine, but they're not super necessary. The hip fire is pretty good, like you can spray people down at close range with it really effectively. It's not a bad gun, like in any way, but I struggle to feel confident in giving it that A tier rating. I really feel like in most cases, even with the Devotion having a spin up and having less common ammo, I would rather have it than a Spitfire because the advantages it gives me are so strong. Whereas the Spitfire is just really level kind of across the way. So I think that I kind of need to rate this Spitfire somewhere in B or potentially C tier. And it feels odd to me to downgrade it so much since the last tier list, because again, the balance of this weapon has barely even changed. I think that maybe it's just the metagame around it has evolved so much that it's become less valuable, or maybe it really is the map that is doing it. I'm not 100% sure. So leave me your comments down below on what you think about the Spitfire, because I honestly am very unconfident with this weapon right now. I generally always try to avoid it and pick like pretty much anything else. It just doesn't feel like it's that effective in this update to me, but it might just be like I've had bad luck or bad days with it and I need more time with it. I really don't know. So let me know down below. I want to hear your opinion on this one, because I just can't really come to a good conclusion here. Moving into sniper rifles, we have one of the most improved weapons throughout the entire history of Apex Legends. The G7 Scout. This is very clearly, very solidly an A tier weapon, all the way up from D, in my opinion, 6 months ago. Let's talk about it. So, it got a damage buff with World's Edge, went from 30 to 34 to the body. It's very, very good. 3-shot downs on everyone but Gibraltar and Caustic in the early game, assuming no armor. It's just silly strong. You get headshots for, I think, 72 damage against low-profile targets. That's a lot. That's a lot of damage. It's, I believe, 68 against regular targets, 72 against low profiles. I don't know the Gibraltar numbers offhand, sorry. But it's the damage buff has reduced your shots to kill across the board in a really significant way. The gun feels way, way, way stronger now. I believe it got some other minor adjustments over the last few months as well, which I, again, don't know offhand. Doesn't really matter here. The point is, G7 on this map in particular, with fights oftentimes happening at really long ranges, with engagements generally maybe not favoring, but being much more friendly to sniper rifles, has made the G7 really, really stand out. It's also got a new hop-up in the double tap, so that makes the gun excellent at medium ranges. Well, it's excellent at medium ranges and all ranges without double tap, but if a single fire weapon like this isn't for you, double tap can really help in order to change the way the gun feels, turn it into like a pseudo burst fire weapon. Well, I guess technically it is a burst fire weapon, it's not pseudo at all. And it can be a lot more comfortable for a lot more people. So while the double tap is maybe not necessarily a buff in a lot of situations, comfort level is a thing. And if it makes the gun feel better to you, if it makes it more consistent for you, then it is a buff for you. And you can toggle it on and off with your select fire key, just like switching between burst and full auto, or both, or single fire or whatever on other guns like the Hemlock. So that's all fine, well and dandy. It's great. You're looking at a very common ammo type in the way of light, because a lot of people are running this gun, and especially running the R99, so light ammo is not hard to find. You're very ammo efficient with this gun as well. You have 10 rounds of mag at base, which is okay. It's not amazing, but it's workable. You put even just a white mag in it, you're up to 15. You're feeling really, really good. Anything above that is just gravy. If you can dump 20 mags out of this thing before having to peek back behind cover to reload and heal, then, you're probably in a really commanding position as it is. G7 Scout is just a really, really fantastic weapon. In particular, I want to note, this gun feels really, really good on Gibraltar, because Gibraltar has gotten so much better over the last few patches. He's actually like a meta legend now. He's used in scrims at the highest possible level on PC, which is incredible from where he came from initially. The gun shield of Gibraltar makes it so hard for people to trade damage back and forth with a Gibraltar. It gives him the cover that he needs to stand out in the open for longer periods of time to actually aim and repeatedly shoot a G7 at you. Whereas previously, if you wanted to snipe in this game, you had to use a DMR or a wingman and fast peek people to get the one shot off and then go right back behind cover. But with Gibraltar being better and the G7 being better, and you combine the two, they're like peanut butter and jelly going together. It just feels very, very strong. It gives you the cover you need and the time you need to deal the damage the G7 wants to deal, much like Gibraltar with a charge rifle, by the way. It's a great combination. So if you're wanting to use a G7, try some Gibraltar. Put the two together, and you're going to be one heckin' beefy boy. Next up, we have the DMR. This has received a handful of changes in the last couple of months, namely with Skull Piercer being removed, but the headshot multiplier at base being increased a little bit, so you're kind of straddling the middle between the old headshot multiplier and the Skull Piercer one. I think you're at 2.15x right now, or 2.1x. I don't remember off the top of my head. Doesn't really matter. But longbow is still pretty good. I think that the longbow is by and by very underrated by the community right now. I think that most people are not utilizing this weapon nearly as much as they ought to be. I think it's still an incredibly powerful weapon, even without Skull Piercer on it. And I think that this is one of the best picks that you can have against the charge rifle besides the wingman itself. This gun is really good at all stages of the game. I mean, if you can grab this thing off your spawn and you headshot someone for like 100+ damage, I mean, that's an instant kill if they don't have like a helmet and armor or the fortified perk or something. If you shoot a Wraith in the head with this thing, goodbye team. So, yeah, that's a little out there, right? But you can't really consistently do that unless you're a super pro god gamer, in which case, again, why are you listening to this video? But with like the lucky headshots in early game out of the way, longbow is still very strong mid game, very strong late game, doesn't need a mag attachment to do its job well. It's capable of letting you do really fast peeks behind cover, behind walls, for big damage spikes on enemies with minimal time spent exposing yourself to enemy fire. Think about like fast peeks in Rainbow Six Siege, where you'll walk towards a corner, lean away from it, and then you lean into it really fast. You get that really fast head peek where your head just flies out, you get a couple bullets, you smash your microphone with your hand, and then you fly right back in. And you end up being pretty much completely impervious to returning fire unless they're pre-firing you, while you can get a lot of bullets out onto your target. The longbow is that gun. You make fast peeks, you shoot and immediately crouch or duck back to the side or whatever the case may be to get your body right back out of harm's way. And the gun is really strong. Like, if you just pop out for less than a half a second and you shoot a bloodhound in the head, they're very upset about that. They are very, very upset about that. And the longbow lets you do these really cool things, especially against charge rifle users and G7 users, because they have to be exposing themselves for long periods of time to get their weapons damage to really start to matter. So if you can just make fast peeks with a DMR and punish them for that, all of a sudden their guns start to become much less effective. The DMR is one of the most high skill, most outplay favoring guns in the game, and I think more people need to be targeting it more than they already are, because it's an excellent, excellent gun, and it's just never used. Like, a DMR with an R99 is a stupidly good loadout, in my opinion. Crack someone's head with a DMR, quickly swap over to your 99, you can tap fire them as you make your way in, reload before your mag is completely emptied, so you get like a half-second reload, and you just dump them if they're still not dead at that point, and it's like, what do they do? You know, one headshot and they're cracked, and then just walk in and finish them. Like, it's very, very strong. Next up, we got the triple take, and nothing much has really changed here. This is like a B or C tier weapon, something in that ballpark. It is acceptable in the early game, acceptable in the mid game. It can be pretty decently punishing to large hitbox characters like Gibraltar and Caustic. Is this sounding familiar to the last tier list to you? It's a fine gun. You pick it up early if you absolutely have to, because there's nothing better available for you. It is technically a weapon that shoots bullets which deal damage. With this gun, your job is to click on people to deal damage, and then you throw it away as quickly as possible so you can get a better people clicker. Like, I don't have a whole lot of positive to say about this gun. It's, I guess, usable as a kind of a crummy shotgun at close short range, which can make it competitive with or better than like a G7 in the same role if you have to use one of those two in those early game fights, which honestly happens pretty often, especially if you drop in Capital or in Train Yard. So, okay, like, the gun is acceptable. Would I ever recommend you take this into diamond lobbies and try to win games with it? No. Would I recommend you try to take it into Apex Predator past the first drop because you absolutely need to? No, drop the gun. Get rid of it. It's just not that great, in my opinion. If you have a different one, by all means, use it, live it, learn it, love it. But I do not think the majority of players should be spending their time trying to get good with this gun. I think there are way better things that will set you up for success with much more regularity. If you're able to slap people with a triple take, consider that a challenge, consider that a bonus, consider that extra. That is not par for the course, in my opinion. Finally, for sniper rifles, we have the charge rifle. Now, I'm not super confident in my rating for this gun as of right now because it's just received numerous nerfs after nerfs after nerfs. So I don't have a solid opinion of where it's going to sit, especially when it comes to high-level competitive play. In my limited time watching Twitch streams of Apex Predator players, like, you know, top 10 players, I see very, very little charge rifles happening. I still see WM1, Wraith plus Pathfinder plus Lifeline on most teams, just running Wingman, Peacekeeper, and R99. I don't really see a whole lot of charge rifle like you used to see. I have not watched any scrims in the last couple of weeks, so if the charge rifle is still destroying scrims, I am simply unaware of it. But either way, with these two factors out of the way, these are irrelevant to how the average person plays and approaches the game. If you are someone who plays Counter-Strike, who plays Titanfall, who plays any game that has hit-scan weapons and is very confident with them, like older Call of Duties besides Modern Warfare as well are a part of this, if you're a good hit-scan player, if you can LG people in Quake, if you can rail people in Quake, the charge rifle is going to be very, very powerful for you. You can deal up to 90 damage on a regular target, assuming no headshots, not assuming any fortified or low-profile damage alterations. All hit scan the entire way through. You have 4 shots per magazine, balanced out, asterisk, by a 5-ish second empty reload, which is absolutely lethargic. That is like slower than a shield battery going off. So the charge rifle has gotten a lot of changes, but the fact still remains, this is a high damage hit scan sniper rifle. It technically has damage drop off over range, but I'll be honest, I can't say that I've ever once felt the damage drop off when shooting people at long ranges. I really can't say I've ever felt it or experienced it. It's seemingly, it's there, but seemingly irrelevant in 90% of situations or higher. I'm just making that number up, but I mean, come on. The charge rifle is a hit scan sniper. It's good, no matter what you do, no matter what you say. This is like an A tier weapon. I guess maybe B tier because it's not used at a high level, but like, if you're playing in silver lobbies, gold lobbies, platinum lobbies, and you have a couple charge rifles on your team and a couple competent players who can aim well, good luck, man. Like, you're probably going to win most of your games until you start playing against way better people who can start shutting you down with wingmans and DMRs. But until you start matching those people, charge rifle is ridiculous. So it's hard to put a singular rating on this weapon because it's so dependent upon the user, so dependent upon the quality of players you're playing against. So I'll say at low levels of play, if you're just playing in public casual lobbies, all the way up to maybe platinum or so, charge rifle is definitely S or A tier. If you are a diamond player, if you are an Apex Predator player, not specifically, but particularly on PC, I feel like the charge rifle is a little bit more middle-ish and more comfortably A tier. Potentially even lower. I'm really not sure. This is kind of where my indecision comes in, which is where my lack of knowledge comes in on this weapon in particular, and my lack of knowledge on the highest levels of gameplay, which I personally, unfortunately, am not good enough to participate in at this point. So we'll just have to see, given the next couple of months, if charge rifle gets more balance changes or not. But this was the craziest, most ridiculous gun that Respawn has ever put into one of their games ever in 5 years when it first came out, and it's approaching the state of being normalized without being completely murdered. So we'll see how it goes in the next couple of months, but I think charge rifle is pretty much where it should be at this point. You know how I said finally we have the charge rifle? I kind of forgot the Kraber, so we're going to talk about the Kraber now, because it is technically also a sniper rifle. Really, is there like very much to say here. You're looking at a 150 plus damage body shot sniper rifle, a one-shot kill on headshots against pretty much all but purple armor, purple helmet, Gibraltar, and caustic. Like, this gun is pretty nuts. You hit one shot, and one person on the enemy team is instantly cracked and weak, and they have to leave the fight pretty much immediately, or they are going to be wingman bait in one single shot. It is just a nutty, nutty fight starter or fight equalizer. If you're in a 1v2 in duos or something, you pop a headshot on one of the two people, all of a sudden, it's an even fight, and that last person is sweating a little bit because they know they got to push into a Kraber, which is one of the scariest things that you can even imagine in this game. Just, Kraber is an A-tier weapon, very, very, very powerful. I recommend that you keep either a Peacekeeper or R99 alongside of it. If you are a god gamer and you are really confident in your aim, then go for a Kraber wingman. But, you know, if you get your Kraber shot and then you miss your wingies, then, you know, let's lights out for you. So I really think 99 or Peacekeeper would be the best pairings for it, like a fine wine. But any of those three are going to serve you really, really well. It's an excellent loadout. Kraber's an excellent gun. There is a reason that it's the only care package gun that most people are ever excited about seeing at the high level. So just keep that in mind. Moving into the EVA 8. Well, we have some buffs that have happened recently that have made shotgun pellets bigger. And then we did another buff where they got even bigger again. So the EVA has gotten equivalently better and better in the last couple of patches. This is, I think, somewhere in either A or B tier, somewhere along that precipice. It's kind of in between, just depending on how a lot of factors in the game shake out, depending on like where your final circle is and which attachments you're able to find by the end of the game, and do you have a double tap or not, and are you playing against a team that has Gibraltar, yes or no, or is it going to be Lifeline, Pathfinder, Wraith, because then it's not as good. So like, you have a lot of factors at play, but no matter what, this is minimum a B tier weapon. I would love for it to be B tier as well, that'd be great, but no, B tier. Great in the early game, great in the mid game, great in the late game. You only really need one attachment, either a bolt or a double tap. Having both is great. And finding a double tap is nowhere near as hard as finding, say, a select fire, because so many people run the G7. In addition to that, because the Peacekeeper is so insanely powerful right now, shotgun ammo is plentiful, easy to find. Getting 2, 3, 4 stacks for your shotgun, I mean, okay, maybe 3, 4 is a little ridiculous, but you get my point. Finding enough to potentially fill those stacks for a shotgun is not very tall of an order. So you can run an EVA with Purple Bolt, with double tap, and just slam rounds downrange with it, and not really care so much. It's pretty great. It feels like Launch Again, where you could have one stack of 64. Whoever thought that was a good idea? It almost is feeling like that again, just with how common shotgun ammo is appearing to be. You also can't forget that the EVA has such a long and good effective range. It's much greater than what you might expect from a shotgun, thanks to its really tight 8-shaped spread pattern. Especially when you put double tap in there, you can get those 2 shots out really quickly. It's really common you're going to be doing, you know, 40, 50, 60 damage per double tap onto people from like 20 meters plus. It's pretty good. Like, sure, it's no R99, sure, it's no wingman, sure, it's no choked out Peacekeeper, but like, if you can't find those things and you need a close range weapon that does just good, consistent damage, EVA's looking pretty good right now. It's really consistent with all the shotgun pellet size changes, etc. Like, it's a fine gun. Really, really is. You should pick it up and try it. My only main complaint with it is that your max damage per trigger pull of the EVA is like 57% of what the Peacekeeper can do in one shot, assuming all pellets hit in both cases. So when you hit a perfect body shot on somebody at close range, it feels largely ineffectual. I can't tell you how many times that I have blasted a Wraith at point blank with this thing, but I don't feel rewarded for it because my damage for hitting all the pellets on there is just so incredibly low. So you got to keep that in mind. Like, if you want this gun to have that burst damage like a Peacekeeper can, you need to have the double tap on there. Otherwise, this is a more consistent damage shotgun. This is like a more long engagement thing. Like a Peacekeeper, you're gonna take a shot and swap. The Eva, you're gonna take all your shots with, is kind of how you're gonna approach your playstyle with it. Not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but the range at which you use a Peacekeeper and the range at which you use an Eva are a little bit different. And even though it's only a couple of meters of difference, that's huge in the world of shotguns. So just keep that all in mind. Like, if you're running an Eva, you're going to be using it at a little bit longer ranges than you might think you would normally want to use a shotgun at, and you may not want to use it in absolute point blank unless you got that purple bolt on there and you're really confident in your aim, or you got a double tap on there and you're again really confident in your aim. But I have found time and time again that if your aim is imperfect and you're trying to run that double tap within 5 meters, it's just really punishing on you. Because if you miss a couple shots, I mean, you're just dumping your mag so fast. You only have so many attempts at dealing damage to your opponent. What happens if you run out of ammo? You know, it's a really real concern. You can't increase the shotgun mag size at all, so gotta be really careful with this gun. Next up, we have the Peacekeeper. This is probably the most overpowered gun in Apex Legends right now. Very easily S tier. And it wasn't that way just a couple of days ago, but there was an update that came out at the time of recording just a few days past. And it increased the size of shotgun pellets. I believe specifically increased their width. And with this change, the Peacekeeper, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a handful of pro players I've seen on Twitch, and some of the people that I play with all the time in my streams, everyone seems to be agreeing that it is too easy to hit your shots with the Peacekeeper right now. Sure, a lot of people complain about the consistency before, and maybe for the average level players, then the Peacekeeper is a more consistent weapon for them, but at high levels of play, the gun is, quite frankly, too simple, too easy, too strong. If you're going to increase the consistency in this way, the maximum damage output potential needs to come down, in my opinion. Being able to hit over 100 damage on one shotgun blast is probably too much, in my opinion. There's not really a whole lot to say here. Peacekeeper requires no attachments. You deal excellent damage. You have a good enough rate of fire with nothing on it whatsoever. Bolts simply make your life better. Precision choke simply makes your life better and makes the gun significantly more versatile, even though it doesn't really need to be. It's got a very common ammo type because, well, everyone runs Peacekeeper because it is too strong right now. It's a close range, regular shotgun, mid-range slug shotgun with the choke, and a long-range kind of slug shotgun that does just a little bits of damage, like an annoying amount of damage from long range, with an ammo stack you mostly don't really care about, all in one package. And pretty much everyone and their mother is running a precision choke right now. You're going to find them really commonly because everyone is running Peacekeeper. It's just the best gun, by far. I am of the opinion that in the next update, the next batch of hop-ups, I think that precision choke needs to go. I think that hop-up needs to be removed in the next update and replaced with something else. Now, sure, that is also slightly, like, very minusculely detrimental to the triple take, but in my opinion, the precision choke on triple take was kind of awkward no matter what you did because it would make your sniper rifle glow and make sound. So like your long range stealth surprise ambush weapon makes sound and tells people where you are. Like, what? And the choking down didn't really seem to help too much anyways. Like, I don't know, your rate of fire got so slow with it that removing the precision choke doesn't really hurt triple take at all, but it will hurt Peacekeeper. So I would very much like to see that hop up go, get replaced with something else that buffs up some other gun that's never used, and let's just restart on this one, okay? That's my opinion. If you guys don't currently favor the Peacekeeper, you don't think your aim is quite good enough for it or whatever, I would very strongly recommend that you give it a try, because you're going to find that it's easier than ever to use. Too easy, even. Next up, moving on, we have the Mastiff. I think this is pretty solidly an A tier. Now, here's going to be my weird take on it, just like last time. This gun feels worse than the Peacekeeper to me in this patch. I would only grab the Mastiff if I have no Peacekeeper attachments, or if I'm really low on ammo for it and I need just the next best thing, or something in that kind of ballpark of thoughts. The Mastiff is still silly strong, don't get me wrong, especially if you choke it down by aiming down sights and you get headshots with it. You can deal over 100 per trigger pull and it shoots pretty fast. However, it is simply, in my opinion, on par with the Peacekeeper, a world drop, while the Mastiff is a care package drop. Now, don't take this downtrodden take and statement as a poor review, because that's not what this is. This gun is very solidly A tier, and a gun that is only 90% as good as the Peacekeeper is still really good. So, it's a Mastiff. You know what it is. You know what it does. Click on people, get wins. Easy peasy. Moving on. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The Mozambique is better than most people give it credit for. I would never pick it up over something else, except in very extreme circumstances. Does this sound familiar from the last tier list, by the way? But people blow this gun way out of proportion. At least, well, not as much anymore, but they used to. For some reason, this gun uses shotgun stats instead of pistol stats. I still, 6 months later, disagree with that. I think this should be classified as a pistol that happens to use shotgun ammo, as opposed to a shotgun that tends to look like a pistol. Like, come on. I think that the gun would perform a whole lot better if it had pistol reload, draw, and stowing times, and aim down sights times as well, but unfortunately it uses shotgun stats for all those things, so the Mozambique is unnecessarily lethargic at all points in time, so that sucks, but whatever. Now, no, okay, so let's talk about what's good about this gun. Hammer point is pretty good. Universal shotgun pellet size buffs are good. Mozambique spread reduction buffs are good. If you aim down sights and you shoot people upper torso with this thing, you can deal like 50 plus damage, which is pretty good. And if you have a hammer point on there, all of a sudden you hit one of the torso for 50, break their white armor, shoot them again for 100 plus, that's good. And if it takes you 3 shots to do that, who cares? It's strong. Like, granted, you're not gonna get a Mozambique with hammer point all that often, and you kind of want the purple bolt too, so you can dump people really quickly with it. But like, it has potential. It can do stuff. If you drop in train yard and that's what you get, you're not completely useless. You can shoot stuff with it and have pretty decent effect. Like, you should pick it up and try it. Is it something you take past the first drop location? Absolutely not. But it's good enough to be fun. Try it. Anyways, now it's time for the actual pistols. P2020 is gonna get my award for most improved gun since 6 months ago, because hammer point. This is actually one of the better guns in the game now, assuming you get hammer point. The damage boost is immense, and it's a terrifying gun to have to play against even into the late game. You are, well, of course, reliant upon the hop up. I need to put that asterisk every 3 seconds, people don't forget, but you are not going to see this gun often because of the requirement. So it's pretty solidly B tier because of this asterisk, but if you ever get the chance to try it, you should absolutely do it. The P2020 is beastly and like borderline overpowered if you can work with the requirements that it has. A Peacekeeper and a P20 seems like a great combo. One shot from your shotgun to deal 110 damage to somebody, and you crack their armor, and you fast swap to the pistol, 1, 2, 3, down. They're done. It's crazy strong. I don't think I have any clips of that specific combination, but just it's fine. It's just don't think too hard about it. It does like 34 damage per shot and a really, really high rate of fire. Just slam it into people. It's great. It's fine. Even if they still have 30, 40 shields left, fine. Hit them for 60 with your Peacekeeper. Switch to P20. Blam, 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 blam. Just they melt. It's great. It's so good. It's so good. Use it. It's fun. All right, we're almost done. I promise. I know we're well over an hour at this point, but we're getting there. We're getting there. RE45. Also pretty good. It's like B tier, maybe C tier, I guess, but I love it, and I'm going to put it in B tier because I want to, and it's my tier list, so it goes where I want it. This gun is great. It's a pocket R99. The R99 is one of the, it's an overpowered gun, and this is like a 70% R99, so that's pretty strong still, right? If you take the R99 and you drop its stats just overall by like, you know, by 15%, it's still a really, really strong gun, still solidly A tier. So if you have the baby brother of that gun sitting 70% below as a really, really, really common drop, you're in a good place. RE45 is a really strong gun, especially early game. You can burn through people with white armor or no armor and just 2 mags, or 1 if you have really good aim. You get some headshots in there, you catch them out of position, whatever the case may be. Like, it's pretty good. I like it a lot. I think you should use it more. I think more people should use it more. I think people should carry this gun past their initial drop. I think that if you're a person who is going to run the meta of R99 Peacekeeper Wingman, you know, and you're going to run those 3 guns, you kind of prefer 99 Peacekeeper or 99 Wingman, I think that the RE45 is absolutely positively worth keeping as an attachment holder and overall good gun, even over the alternator in some cases. If you are wanting just like a better fast killing close range gun as opposed to like a more mid-range SMG that is consistent damage, which is what the alternator does, like RE45 is legitimately good. I really like it. I put it in B tier. You should use it. And finally, we have the Wingman. This is the S tier gun that could. This is the gun that, despite nerf after nerf after nerf after change, remains one of the most ubiquitous weapons in Titanfall 1, almost Titanfall 2 before it got nerfed into the ground, and in Apex Legends. This is a weapon that is always and forever, by just its fundamental design of being a high damage revolver, always going to either be overpowered or underpowered. Finding a way to make the Wingman sit on that razor's edge, in my opinion, is pretty much impossible. This weapon is as good as, if not better than, the DMR at all ranges at which you would use the DMR. This weapon is better at medium range than most assault rifles. This weapon is competent, or more than competent even, at close ranges, especially if you can pull off headshots. All in all, the Wingman is probably, by and large, the best gun in the game overall. Now, the R99 and Peacekeeper in certain situations are better, but if you could only have one gun on your person for an entire game, and you couldn't have a second one, I think most people would select the Wingman as their one weapon they could ever use for an entire game, period and full stop. I honestly believe that. While it may or may not have the same ubiquity in console metagames, on PC, when you're looking at high-tier gamers with mice, this gun is too much, plain and simple. The fact that you can hit 70+ damage headshots on people while spamming a 10-round magazine while AD strafing from 200 meters away at full speed with a Wraith hitbox is too good. It is too much. It is not good for the game, in my opinion, but this is the world we live in. This is the gun that we're given. Is this a Disturbed song? Something like that. I don't know. But still, Wingman is crazy good. If you haven't already mastered it, what are you doing? Go pick it up and start using it right now. Anyways, with all that said, I think that is pretty much it for the guns on the tier list. I guess I will go ahead and include grenades really quickly. Nothing has changed. It's still like Arc Star best. Frags are pretty good. Fire Stars are also pretty good. Or Fire Stars, Thermite grenades, excuse me, are also pretty good. But Arc Stars are still far and away the #1 ordnance, and you should always just try to stack as many of those as humanly possible, because one Arc Star will win you entire games, whereas Frags and Thermites generally will not do that. They will just provide you some benefits, some advantages, but Arc Stars will just straight up win games. So pick those, use those, and then everything else is secondary to Arc Stars. Legends we're not going to cover here. We're going to do that separately, if at all. And I think that about covers every weapon. Hope you guys learned something new. If you guys disagree with my tier list, that's okay. You're allowed. In summary, G7 is excellent. Top tier weapon. Wingman, Peacekeeper, and R99, still, in my opinion, probably too strong overall. And Kraber's pretty good too. Apart from that, everything else is alright. It's okay. It's usable. But those are like the big 5 right now. Anyways, everyone, I'll see you again hopefully very soon. If I don't see you here on YouTube, I stream on Twitch a lot. I'll definitely see you there. Y'all have a great day, and take care.